Welcome to the Millennial Body Image Project. We're two licensed dietitian nutritionists bringing you conversations that cut through the food noise, debunk wellness trends, and remind you that it's not you, it's the systems stacked against you.
Together, we'll explore the struggles so many of us carry, challenge the fear-mongering that fuels them, and offer evidence-based, compassionate tools to support your body on its own terms.
Because your lived experience matters, and your body is not the problem. There we go.
Here we go. Okay, the past couple of episodes, we've been digging deep into food noise of what it is, where it's coming from. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about how now that you have a better understanding of what the different inputs of food noise can be, what can we actually do about it? Which we're sure you guys have probably been waiting like a month to hear what this.
I mean, the common thing is there's a pill for that is like what you'll hear everywhere.
Yeah.
But it actually, as we've told you before, and as like we've gone through each of these, it's like, yes, there's a pill for that, but it actually doesn't really resolve the root cause of that problem as much as it just like shunts the whole mechanism for you to hear about it because it just shunts your hunger. But that was a conversation for another day. And so I'm going to move on. We've already discussed that with you. But the idea, like, this, it's so, one of the things that I guess the reason why I'm bringing that up is like, what can we do about it is because we are so impassioned as a collective and as a community that people want this to be quieted, right? They want to be able to tune this out. And so how do we tune out the noise and also at the same time acknowledge that the noise is happening and what do we really do about it, right? And we've been kind of building on this with each episode that we've done so far. But I think like it won't be shocking to hear that if we know that food noise is kind of all of these weird food thoughts and rules that we have, that it wouldn't be shocking to hear that one of the first steps as part of quieting that noise is that you have to challenge and weed out the morality and fear mongering that we're collectively carrying around with us like a backpack full of noise everywhere we go. How do we have to challenge those things and weed it out and kind of weed out fact from fiction because right now when we're in the noise and in the thick of it, it's really hard to see the forest through the trees. And so what we have to do first is acknowledge and challenge the fact there's a lot of trees here and I have a lot of fear around certain types of food. I have a lot of food beliefs that are really limiting to me. I have all these things that are coming up that infiltrate my brain every single time I go to try to eat something or make a meal that no wonder it feels so easy to just be like, screw it. I'm not going to eat anything at all, right? Or I'm just going to eat whatever the hell I want and then move on with your life, right? But the point is that first step is we have to challenge it and acknowledge that it's happening and weed it out. So how do we do that? How do we challenge it? And how do we weed out the morality and fear mongering that we have around food? What do we do?
And one of the first steps to do that is to recognize that this is a system that's feeding into itself. We've been talking a lot about this season, and we kind of tease this in the trailer and the intro. It's like, it's not about you being the problem. It's the systems that are in place that are creating this problem and then also selling you what they say is the solution. But it's not actually even fixing the problem that they have been a part in creating. Right? So when we look at this, and we can call it the food noise system, or, we call it medical weight stigma, we call it health fear mongering, all this stuff that we talk about throughout the course of the podcast. Part of this is recognizing that the concept of food noise as we know it now is a creation and like a brilliant marketing tactic on the behalf of these companies that are trying to sell you a solution to this new created problem. And food noise, the root of what it is not new, right? Like food noise has always been a thing, but pathologizing food noise is the problem they have created to now create a whole like subsection of dietary supplements and medications and everything. And really, it's all tied back to weight loss. And that's where a lot of the morality comes in. As we talked about on the previous two episodes, once food noise has started to be pathologize, people think that it's a problem and that you should never have any food noise whatsoever, which in the previous episode, we talked about why that's not true and like where it comes from. But so, as Christina was saying, we want to be able to challenge that belief. Well, identify that belief first as like a, whoa, it doesn't have to be this way. And then start to weed out the morality around food and food noise and the fear mongering that comes around with it. So that looks like being able to call it out and identify it, but not beating yourself up about it and coming in with a bit of a permission slip and of like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'm not the worst person in the world because this is happening to me. This isn't a problem. This is a product of all of these different systems that are in play. And so, one of the things that we'll be talking about today is we need to go back to the basics of understanding and the basics of nutrition from a neutral perspective that doesn't have any morality, that doesn't have any fear mongering, and that doesn't have like a discount code in the comments or anything about it. Right? I say that a lot, but it's true. Is so many of our clients come to us telling us that they know a lot about food and about nutrition and about diets and stuff. It's like, yeah, you do. The fact is, you actually know too much to the point where it's confusing you, contributing to your food noise, but you don't know enough about the things that you actually need to help you get out of this situation. And I want to reframe that in a way because that almost sounds like, oh my gosh, I just need to know more. And that's just going to add more to your food noise. No, it's about distilling down to get back to the basics, tune out a bunch of this other stuff to figure out what actually is going to work for you and your body and your capacity and your lifestyle in a way that doesn't make you feel bad or like something is missing.
Yeah, I think a lot of times one of the thing that I'm thinking about as you're describing that is that it almost sounds like I think the things that where people get tripped up on this is that they feel like their nutrition has to be very granular. Like when they'll say things to me like, I know what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know how to do it. But I also would really love to know how many macros of this I'm supposed to be eating. And it's like, well, that's noise, right? Trying to have this idea of like, oh, this is how much I need. Yes, there are dietary guidelines. There are things that we want to make sure that we're getting enough of things, but that's typically not the perspective that people are bringing to it when they bring that up. It is a way for them to monitor their food intake and to use it as like a tool to what's the word I'm looking for? Like
Restrict.
well, yeah, to restrict, but I don't think people think about it that much. Not everyone thinks about it in that like, to that extent, as much as it is about to monitor their food intake, monitor what it's doing, using it to adapt their body in a way that they want to have their body adapted, and that's what contributes to food noise, and I feel like in a lot of ways, yes, it is about challenging and weeding out the morality and fear-mongering, but it's also about identifying where all of your inputs are coming from, which is what we talked about a lot in the last episode of like identifying where it's coming to you the most and how it's impacting you. But also, I think that we have this obsession as a collective on collecting and gathering nutrition nuggets. We love nutrition nuggets, right? We love gathering these little things that we feel like we should be doing or what we want to be doing and all this stuff. And like, oh, I'm going to take this little nugget and add to this thing. And each thing feels very like, I think innocuous is the right word, but it feels very innocuous and that it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, that can't be impacting me so much. Like it's just a little nugget of information. But each nugget you gather, you then bring to the refrigerator and you open up your refrigerator and you're looking and all you're thinking about is all of these little nuggets of like, well, is that enough? Is that enough protein? Is that enough carbohydrates? Is that enough fiber? Is that enough fat? Is that enough this? Is that enough that? How do I get enough of this? Oh, I saw this minerals person who was talking about all these minerals. Is this enough minerals? Is this enough of this? Is this is this riddled with glyphosate? Is this riddled with toxins? What do I do? How do I make food decisions? All of this stuff. And so when we're talking about education and weeding out the morality, all of those nuggets that you're constantly collecting are informing you on how you're going to make food decisions. And when you sit there and look in front of look in front of the refrigerator and you can't decide what the hell to eat, it's because you've gathered way too many nuggets. And I got to tell you, going back to the basics to a more neutral perspective around food is going to seem boring as hell. Why
Oops,
are you
whoops,
laughing
sorry.
so hard?
You guys can't see this, but I'm literally laughing so hard, I'm, like, tearing up
You're
because
doing?
no, because I'm when you kept saying nuggets, I kept getting this visual of, like a 20-piece McDonald's chicken nuggets that are just, like, sitting next to you at the refrigerator, and each one of them has, like, googly eyes and is like, "But what about protein? What about potassium?" So every
Anna,
time you said a
you are
nugget,
such a goof.
I'm literally crying. I don't think there's
Well, I think you guys know, no,
oh my
you'll
god.
be if you know, you know, we're gonna have an Instagram post that's going to be chicken nuggets with googly eyes and having stuff being said, and all the caption's gonna be is, "If you know, you know."
And
It's
then some idiot who doesn't take any context is gonna be like, "I can't believe these dietitians are recommending that people eat chicken nuggets." Oh my god. So
"You so cute."
So going back to the inputs of food noise, right? We're going to talk through all of these. As a refresher from the last episode, we're talking about hunger, a preoccupation with the rules or what can be construed as like the beginnings of orthorexic tendencies, the restriction and obsession cycle, the nutrition jungle, and then emotional eating. So we want to help you identify which of these areas is impacting you the most. Because, of course, it's never going to be only one thing. It's never going to be only one thing, as we say a lot on this podcast. And so, if you don't know how to identify which one of these is impacting you the most, we're going to talk you through that. And then once you've identified like, this one keeps coming up. Like, what can I do about this? We're going to give you what I'm going to call now and laters to lean into the nostalgia of old like 90s candy that we used to eat. And you're going to have a right here, right now tool. And then you're going to have a tool that requires a little bit more capacity that you can do not in the moment when you're experiencing this overwhelming food noise or whatever it feels like. But it's something where we encourage you to get a little bit more help and how you can dig deeper so that it starts to happen less frequently in the future.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the things too to remember as well is that when we go through this, you might find that you have multiple inputs. It's like sometimes it can be physical, sometimes it can be emotional, all intertwined together. Sometimes it's physical and restrictive cycle. Like obviously that can make a lot of sense. So you can see yourself sometimes showing up in multiple ways. One of the things that we have is we created a tool for everybody called a daily food thought filter. And this is really just and you can get it off of our website if you want to, and it's free for you to download. And really what it does is it walks you through how to get curious, not critical about where your food thoughts are coming from and how deeply they're impacting you, right? So what it has broken down is it has what time did this thought start popping up? And it can be any thought. You'll see in a second too. Like, what is the thought that's coming up? Or is there a craving? I can't stop thinking about bagels, or I can't stop thinking about chips, or I really want these cookies that we made last night. It's like, and I always joke around with my clients that it's sometimes we feel like food is talking to us from the pantry. It's not talking to you from the pantry, like, they actually can't talk to you. This is all of our noise that's coming up and all of our weird food rules that are coming up that makes it feel like food is talking to us from the pantry. So, think about it from that perspective of, "Okay, I'm starting to get these thoughts around food and what's coming up for me, and I can't stop thinking about something," right? And then the idea is, okay, what is that thought? What is this thing that's coming up? What is the volume? What is the intensity here? Is this a 10 out of 10? It's really intense. Is this a 1 out of 10? I'm starting to think about it, or it's there, or it's this lingering thought that's there. And then it can intensify as it goes on. And then you break down what do I think is underneath it? Is it physical? Maybe I'm just actually hungry and I'm thinking about food and that's totally normal, right? Refer to hunger fullness scale to get an idea about where you might be in your hunger, right? Then it's also, is it mental, right? Is it something like a mental noise? Is this like a should or a shouldn't? Like, man, I really want to have a bagel, but I shouldn't have a bagel because bagel has carbs. Like, and it's like too many carbs. God forbid you have a bagel, right? And all these things that come up, and then emotional, and then restriction cycle, right? Each of these things are these places of where this could be like manifesting from. These types of food thoughts could be coming up. And then the idea is then to do what did I try, if anything? to curb that thought pop up, or that thought or craving, or this food noise is coming up? What ended up happening? Did I decide I'm not gonna eat anything, or I can't have bagels, so I restrict the bagels, and then the intensity goes up? Right? Do we start thinking about it even more? Are we, like, craving bagels? Are we dreaming about bagels? Are we, like, going to the store and smelling everyone else's bagels? Like, what are we doing? Like, how and like, what's happening from here? And then each one of these, and what it does is, this is again, like, one of my favorite phrases, it's just an invitation. It's an invitation for you to identify and get to know these food thoughts that you're having, this noise that you're having. What is the intensity around it? How overwhelming is it for you? Or is it just like this annoying little, like, gnat fly that's just kind of there? Or is it, this 10,000 foot, like, 10,000 pound weight that you feel like is sitting on your chest that you're thinking about all of the time, right? One, the intensity gives us some insight into how much this is impacting you on their day to day and how much support you really need, right? Like, if this is a 10,000 pound weight on you all the time, we need to integrate a lot more support to understand, why is this weighing on you so heavily? What is coming up for you? And then the things underneath it is more of, what are the action steps that we can take to understand and support this form of hunger that you're having, right? Whether it's physical hunger, mental hunger, emotional hunger, or a restriction or obsessive cycle that you're falling into and going through. Right? And so this food thought filter is designed to help you understand what is happening and why it feels so loud, and then ultimately what you can do about it, right? How are you going to respond to that? And if I tried something, how did it help? Did the intensity go down a little bit? Did I allow myself to have a bagel and now I'm cool? Or did it ramp back up again and now we're having mental restriction type stuff, or physical restriction thoughts start coming up, right? And so this really gives you an opportunity to get to know those thoughts a little bit better and understand where they're coming from. But we're
Mhm.
going to also break down what to do in the moment with each one if you identify what type it is, and then what you can do maybe later, because most of the time we're not diving deeper when we're in the throes of, like, a complete food, like, noise meltdown, right? Like, that's probably not gonna happen. That's A-okay, and this is something you can do reflectively as well, just something to note.
So, before we dive into these now and laters, as we're going to be calling them, there's something to keep in mind too, and we've talked about this with many different tools before, is just because we're giving you tools does not mean that you need to use them all the time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
does not mean that if we give you a tool, it's going to be the end all be all thing that works and it's going to immediately cure you. And if it doesn't work, then you're a failure. That's not what this is.
Oh my god, people, please, please don't bring perfectionism. You can't heal perfectionism with perfectionism, y'all, alright? So
Yes.
please do not do that to yourselves.
Yes. And also, throwback to a very old episode about burnout with Dr. Crystal Frazzi, you can't cure burnout with perfectionism either. So there's your little
No.
nugget for today. Speaking of nuggets,
Dana and I are obsessed with nuggets.
so speaking of hunger, Christina's craving chicken nuggets.
Well, it is almost lunchtime, so I'm getting
Yes.
hungry. There's no doubt
Yes.
about it.
Yes. So, if your food noise is primarily hunger related, whether or not you can hear hunger fullness cues, that's something different that we'll go into
Totally.
also. The now portion of this is if you want to figure out if this is just quote unquote hunger food noise, eat something and see what happens.
And it can be anything. I think sometimes people get caught up and they're like, well, that's where it all started. I felt hungry and then now I don't know what to eat. Eat something.
Mhm.
Simplify it. Choose something to do. I actually just did a reel on my Instagram talking about how one of the main things that I say is, eating is better than not eating. And this is where we get stuck right now. Like, we hear this thing and you're like, okay, eat something. And you're like, yeah, but what? And I'm going to tell you right now, here is your local nutritionist telling you, eat anything. I don't really care what it is, just eat something, because sometimes we get so bogged down in the what that it prevents us from doing the damn thing. and that's called eating. And so right now, and yes, I acknowledge that you have food noise. You're also acknowledging that you have food noise, right? Because you're thinking about it, you're noticing this, you're identifying that this is coming from a place of hunger. It doesn't really matter what you're eating. Eat something to help support your hunger. And then as your hunger and your nervous system starts to calm down, you will be able to make a more informed, regulated decision about what you're going to have to eat.
Mhm. And
For
another
everyone
piece,
who's struggling with the, "I know, but now what? Like, what do I eat?" Eat
yes.
something. Doesn't
Well,
matter what.
the other thing there is that if you're paralyzed but I don't know what to eat, the hunger is actually not your primary food noise issue. One of
Yes.
these other things. And so
Yeah.
that's something to think about with these tools too, is like if you try one of these tools and it's bringing up this other stuff, you've actually just unlocked a great nugget of knowledge for yourself.
Speaking of nuggets,
Yes, that it's coming from somewhere else, and that can really feel like, "Oh my gosh, I've just unlocked another can of worms, and, like, now I have something else to work on it." No, it's we're just digging deeper to see where this is really coming from, and so, yes, on the one hand, that can be really frustrating of, "Okay, I acknowledge I need to eat something and I'm getting hangry," but then if the restriction-driven obsession, rules, and everything are getting in the way,
mental noise. Yep.
that's actually what is preventing you from being able to act on hunger cues if you even hear them. And so that's getting into the later part of still within the hunger related food noise is if you have the time and capacity, this is not in the moment of I'm starving and I need to eat something. This is okay, I've eaten something and now I'm still trying to work on this in a more regulated environment. You want to start to dig into why am I not eating consistently? What is getting in the way of that? If you feel like you're overeating at any point during the day, you actually want to look at what's happening before that over the whole
Mhm.
course of the day. Because one of the most common things that Christine and I see in clients who identify with overeating or binge eating or scavenger eating is you are not eating enough and not eating consistently and enough throughout the rest of the day. Your body's gotta get nutrients from somewhere. It's like, "Hey, girl, hello, we still have nutritional needs even if you haven't fulfilled them the rest of the day, so it's gotta come from somewhere." And then
Mhm.
another thing to consider here is if you are someone who doesn't identify with being able to hear your hunger fullness cues, and I think we have an episode that came out 2 weeks ago that really dove into that, is what are the different inputs that are disconnecting you from your hunger fullness cues? And it could be any of the other forms of food noise that we're going to be talking about next, also.
Yeah. So I think I really love that you brought up how if you are identifying that you're having hunger and then you're having all these thoughts around, okay, I don't know what to have, that it really is that hunger is not really the problem as much as it might be the problem is like my patterns of eating are inconsistent and therefore I'm having irregular hunger eating pattern like hunger patterns and things like that, right? What I think is really interesting is if you're noticing, if you identify, like, oh no, I fully identify that I'm starving and I need to eat something and I don't know what to eat because I have a lot of food rules and there's nothing here. And it's like you open the refrigerator, like, I can't eat any of this, or like I've heard stories from clients of mine where this is such a great example of this. It's like they'll literally go to a restaurant and they have no food allergies, right? There's like absolutely no reason for someone to feel this way other than the noise that they have, and that's what I'm saying, right? Is there's nothing prohibiting them from being able to eat, but they'll look at a menu and say, "I can't eat anything here." That is a perfect example of food noise from mental rules and shoulds, right? Well, I can't have french fries because french fries are cooked in oil and that's bad, right? Okay, check, bah. And it's potatoes, bah, right? Double bah. I can't have that salad because it has this certain types of dressing on it and that's going to be too high. But what I really want is this dressing, but they don't have that dressing available, right? And then it's like, okay, well, I can't have this. I can't have a burger because a burger doesn't have enough fiber in it. And I need to make sure I have enough fiber in it. So I can't do that, right? Then it's like, "Oh, I can't have this because of this, and this going into it." And so to me, that's the perfect example of the food noise and the nutrition jungle leading to confusion that leaves someone who has no food allergies, no real restrictions, standing there in front of a menu saying, "There's nothing for me to eat here." That is purely because of your noise. or restriction driven food noise, which is a separate topic, right? Which we're going to get to. In those moments, in those moments where you feel like I need to eat something, I'm hungry, but I don't know what to eat, and I'm having all of these rules and things come up. The best thing that you can do in that exact moment is have something that feels safe for you to eat. If that's a cup of yogurt, do that. If that's the salad without the dressing, then do that. If that's just the french fries, then do that. Whatever it is that feels like it's a safe thing for you to have in that moment that kind of quiets the noise a little bit, that's exactly what you need to do. Lean into something that feels like an easy go to. I'm going to just respond to my hunger with something that I know that I'm not gonna have a lot of, like, residual shoulds about and shame about. I'm just gonna go to something in that moment that feels safe and easy for me to execute, right? Later, later, then, only then, after again, you are fed and in a more regulated state, can you go back and dig deeper into where is this coming from? Why was it so hard for me to choose something to eat at this restaurant? Even though I have no inherent things, what are the rules that are keeping me from being able to engage in this activity right now? Why can't I be present during this meal? Why can't I make a decision even though I did all of the grocery shopping and all of the groceries are here? Why do I feel this way about these things and making this food, making a plate of food for myself and allowing myself to eat it, right? That happens later, after the fact, right? But in those moments when we've identified, no, it's all of the noise that's coming in about what I should and shouldn't be eating and all that stuff and food rules and all of the things, in that moment, eat something simple. Eat something that feels safe for you to eat that doesn't have a lot of guilt associated with it. That's
Mhm.
my number one advice.
Yeah. And that can be a tool that is helpful when we get into the restriction driven food noise as well. So we talked about this in the last episode, but this is really if you feel like you fall into the restrict binge cycle and you have a lot of obsession about food, then you have a lot of, oh my God, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And in a way, this can also fall into the category of people who would go to a restaurant and they're like, oh my God, I can't eat anything. One caveat I want to put on that is because, of course, I work with a lot of people with GI issues, is this can also happen if you
Mm,
are actively working through what are and can feel like food-driven symptoms, especially with gut stuff, right? Because
oh, yeah,
we
for sure.
acknowledge that obviously that can happen, but the nervous system also can play a huge role in either promoting or reducing your symptoms. And this can fall into the restriction driven food noise also. And I would say this is more rooted in fear than the other
Mm,
category. And this can be whether you have GI issues or you've done what we call therapeutic elimination protocols in the past or not, or if it's more on the disordered eating side, but not necessarily related to symptom management, right?
mhm,
And you can identify for the now and laters that we're getting into here. For the now, you can identify that this, what feels like chaos in this binge restrict cycle, you can just simply, not simply, but more simple than some of this other stuff, is just identify that this is happening and that eating doesn't have to be this chaotic.
mhm,
That on its own can be a semi-regulating thought. Is it going to stop all of this in its tracks? Of course not. Is it going to fix everything? Of course not. But this is harder to deal with in the moment than some of these other tools. Because sometimes when you're in the middle of a binge restrict cycle, and specifically when you're in the middle of the binge, it can feel like you're in the middle of a tunnel and you can't see anything in your peripheral vision and you don't even know what's happening. There's
mhm,
not a lot of things that you can do in the moment unless you have practiced tools with a therapist or someone who works on this stuff that you can bring yourself out of that moment. So sometimes you just have to wait until you've reached the end of that moment. And then what you really need is a lot of self compassion because a lot of guilt and a lot of shame can come in at that part. Christina and I have both experienced this personally and with a lot of clients as well. So we know exactly what it's like. And even just stopping and saying, like, okay, that really sucks. And I don't feel great right now, but it doesn't have to be this way. And I don't have to continue in this cycle. And just acknowledging that that is a possibility and there are ways to get out of it, even if you don't have the tools and you don't know what those ways are right now, that can feel like a huge permission slip in a way when you really feel despair in that moment, when you feel a lot of
Mhm.
guilt, when you feel a lot of shame in that moment.
When I think of this restriction driven type of food noise, and especially when you fall into like an obsessive binge like cycle with it, I think one of the things that is really difficult is that it really does align and can almost be very much sandwiched between mental restriction and emotional restriction and how much it feeds into both, right? And so, as you were saying about compassion, I think that's honestly the only way out is understanding and saying, like, validating, like, yeah, this is really hard and it's very complicated. And I have a lot of things that I have to unpack here. And also, again, it goes back to in that now moment that even, yes, as we're identifying that this is happening, and eating doesn't have to be this chaotic. Yes, all the things. Yes, we're gonna flood ourselves with compassion, but at the same time, we still need to, especially if we fall into a restrictive binge cycle, a lot of times those binges can happen after periods of restriction, or restrictions can happen after a period of binging and things like that. They can go back and forth. I think the truth is we have to then remember that eating is always better than not eating, and it's okay that you had something to eat, even if it wasn't exactly what you thought would be perfect to eat in that moment. Even if it was a little bit more chaotic, even if it got a little out of hand, even if you didn't have anything to eat earlier in the day and you were very restrictive, it's always great that you're starting to take the step into eating something in that moment and starting to work through that so that you can build more consistency so that it does feel less chaotic, right? And I guess, like, that's the only thing that I would kind of add to that when I think about, especially as I'm seeing right now so many clients of mine with highly restrictive tendencies and highly binge-like tendencies too, that is always a thing I go back to, that no matter what happened, we still have to eat the next day. We still have to build that consistency, and it's okay that this happened. It's okay that we kind of I noticed that we forgot to eat 3 meals in the day and fell into this pattern. Sometimes it's a habit, sometimes it's a very deeply ingrained pattern that we do because this is how we handle food. And so I just want to note that and say that it's okay. And then as you get into the later, as Dana will talk about, you have to come in with a lot of compassion.
Mhm. Yeah. And this is really one big area, and, we'll we'll say this for all of these areas. It's like, get some support. Like, work with somebody who can help you identify how often this pattern is happening for you versus how often you are able to nourish yourself consistently throughout the day. Like, what is the split there? Because if you 6 days out of the week are falling into this restrict binge cycle and 1 day out of the week you're able to nourish yourself consistently throughout the day, yeah, that's a lot of restriction driven food noise, and that would be a 10,000-pound elephant or whatever on your brain of food noise. Yeah, that is a lot. So it's helpful to work with someone. One of the tools that I do with people in session, I don't ask people to do this on their own, caveat here, is we will sometimes do what I call a binge journal. And this is
Mhm.
to gather information and to try to bring some neutrality around the binges. And so we're trying to look at this from a clinical standpoint and a little bit more of a detached standpoint. This is not something that you do in the moment. The aim of this is we want to get some information on what is happening when the binges happen and before and after so that we can start to understand some patterns. And if we can identify patterns, then we can start to identify a potential way out of it if you don't want this to happen as often, which, like, you probably don't want this to happen as often that it does, but I never assume, right? So part of this can be identifying what foods or food groups or rules do you have around foods that you tend to binge on? When does it tend to happen during the day? Are there triggering events for you? Does it always happen after a certain event, after work, when your kids are asleep at a certain time of night, blah, blah, blah. Like all these different questions and stuff, right? And you have to approach this very gently because if you do this on your own, this can feel very invasive and this can feel like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. And you really do have to be at a certain stage in your recovery in order to do this. Caveat again. But what this can do is help you to release what can feel like the pressure valve on some of the shame
Mhm.
and also help you feel like, oh, there is a way out of this. Like I don't have it right now and that's okay, but it doesn't have to be like this forever. And sometimes that is enough to release that pressure valve. So this is one of the areas where we highly recommend that you work with somebody who can help you work through this stuff because listen, if you can do this on your own, we wouldn't be here. You probably wouldn't be here. And everybody would have solved this already. But this stuff is incredibly complicated and it is multi-layered. And that's why you haven't been able to do this on your own. So take the guilt away, like try to take a little bit of that shame, a little bit of that guilt, a little bit of the, oh my gosh, why can't I just pull myself up by my bootstraps and do this on my own? Because it's complicated.
Yeah.
Of course you
It's
can't.
And to be perfectly honest, it's never really about the food itself, right? Like, going back to what I said earlier, the stuff in the pantry is not talking to you. Like, cookies don't have a chokehold on you. The way that we feel about cookies is what has a chokehold on you, right? And the beliefs that we're carrying about it. The cookie never did anything to anybody, right? Other than taste delicious, right? So to me, sometimes having that conversation with somebody who's a trusted person or a professional in that field of expertise, having that conversation and releasing that pressure valve on the shame, like Danny was talking about in those conversations, and having, like, almost like in a way, like your binge journal type of thing, can be so incredibly impactful because things can't live in the light. Shame loves to hang out in the darkest of dark places. And when we start to bring these things up, talk in these moments, then you get to have a really great experience of having that release a little bit and feel a little less shameful around it because you have someone there who's saying, you know what? You're not alone. You are not alone in this. There's lots of people who feel this way, who have a really difficult time with these things too. And this is not your fault. That conversation in and of its own is huge, and if you haven't heard that before and you're in the middle of it, pause, rewind, listen to it because it's just as relevant to you. You're not some extenuating circumstance where it really should be shameful. You're not, like, you're not. This happens to everybody, and I just want to note that as we go on to the next one because this is a really difficult one. Like, the mental restriction and the emotional noise that we have are so deeply sandwiching this restriction driven food noise, and so we can't talk about these other things without talking about all of this, right? Like, because this is where all the noise is coming from, and so how are we supposed to work on it if we don't talk about what we can do now and what we can do later? And a lot of this stuff is in the moment, it's, "Here's how I'm gonna handle it right now," like, emergency pack kinda style. The later is where you get to have the deeper reflection and the support that you need in order to move through it so that each time gets a little bit easier and you don't feel like you have to put on your emergency brakes each time. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Speaking of things where food is not actually the issue, we're going to talk
Yeah.
about emotional eating as it relates to food noise. Christina made this really good point before we started recording. She said, you don't have a food problem, you're a master dissociator. Or
I did say
you
that.
don't have the tools or capacity to work through your emotions. And so those statements there are actually the now tool of the now and later is realizing food is not the issue here that it is made out to
Mm-mm.
be in a lot of these emotional eating circles and workbooks and coaches and things. And by the way, we're going to do an entire episode on this. So this is
You
not the
buckle up.
last you will hear of this.
Buckle up. I mean, some people do
Their whole
their en
business.
their entire business is just around emotional eating patterns and all of the things too. Some really impactful, really great work. Some not so great, run, scream in the other direction vibes. But I think what's really difficult about emotional noise is as a society, the message is that you should only eat when you're hungry and you shouldn't get hungry often.
Mhm.
Right? That is the narrative. And if you get hungry a lot, then there's something wrong with you. And if you want to eat outside of hunger times, then there's also something wrong with you, right? And so that immediately needs to be fixed. I want people to know right now that you don't have a food problem because food is inherently emotional. We use food and have used food for generations as part of the coping strategies that we have. I think of people bring you food to help cope with the deep grief that you have in the moment around the loss of a loved one. Like that's part of the entire experience, and I find that to be a really beautiful example, and this is an example that is used throughout multiple cultures all over the world. But when the narrative is you shouldn't be hungry often, and when you are, you better eat something and it better look a certain way to stave off that hunger, and it should look like it should be perfect, well, and nutritionally dense, and it should be for nutrition only. Food is to nourish you. Yeah, it's also there to nourish you on multiple different levels too, and emotional eating is part of that. I think where it becomes difficult for people is that when we don't have a diverse set of coping tools, right? So in that moment right then, when you're like, I'm having one hell of a day, and all you can think about is coming home, put on your comfy pants, putting on Gilmore Girls, cuddling up and drinking a pint of Ben and Jerry's or ordering whatever it is that you want to order or whatever it is that you want to do, or you want to have a little smorgasbord of stuff available to you to pick at and nourish and like nosh on and have a great grand old time. And you might be crying the whole time, you might be angry the whole time, you might be all kinds of different feelings, right? But what's really interesting about that is like, yes, there's nothing actually wrong with that. What's the issue was what happens is when we use that as our only vessel to feel our feelings. Because then we're using food as almost like an
Crutch.
emotional crutch. Yeah, it's like a crutch, right? You still have to feel your feelings, right? Like do all the things. Watch the Gilmore Girls for the 100th time with your pint of ice cream and your pumpkin spice latte and all of the yummy things that you want to do, whatever it is that makes you feel good in that moment, right? Do all of those things. And also, we have to talk about the feelings, which, we also are told not to do. And so this is where it's like, this isn't a food problem. This isn't the problem with food. This is the problem with us not wanting to feel our emotions. And like, I get it. Feeling feelings is tough.
I mean,
It's way
Christina, conceal, don't feel. Don't let them know.
Do you not know what happened to Ellis? If K-pop Demon Hunters has taught us anything,
I was just gonna say.
if you cry while you listen to Golden, oh my god, you guys, this is for you. You're living in this world, right? So I feel like it's just so important. I think sometimes we do have this narrative that emotional eating is like this tool that has to be immediately squashed and this behavior that's a change. And no, we actually need to bring more compassion to it and say like, hey, no, this is happening. And also at the same time, maybe I don't have the tools yet to feel my feelings the way that I need to and have them move through me because sometimes I'll say to clients of mine, we have this pattern of if I say this feeling, I am this feeling. And that's not necessarily the truth, right? So I think that that's where what I meant by saying you're kind of a master dissociator and like you don't have a food problem, it's really an emotional feeling problem
And
and
yet,
resources for where and how to release those feelings.
yeah, even when it feels like the food is controlling you, it's not.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
these tools can help you move through that. Okay. So we hope that that was helpful with all these different tools. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive. I mean, we love talking about this stuff. It comes up so often in client sessions these days.
Oh
So
my
we're happy to
gosh.
help however we can. If you would like to take a look at the daily food thought filter that Christina
There you go.
mentioned before,
That's it.
I will put the link in the show notes. It's going to be a freebie on our website, so you can go get it there. And then, like we mentioned before, we're also going to we have more episodes coming up on emotional eating. As I mentioned to Christina before we started recording, we have to do our annual burnout episode. So that will be coming up.
Guys, 2025, y'all. Shit.
Every year since the
2020.
panini.
The
Yes,
panini.
the
Yes.
panini. I feel like every year it's an, "Oh my god, I can't believe." Yeah, I mean, do it. It is what it is, guys. So,
Here we are.
yes. So, if you want more support on this, if you have questions on this, if you want us to do more episodes on this, you can email us at millennialbodyimageproject@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at Millennial Body Image Project or either of our individual Instagrams. I'm Dana Monsi's CNS and Christina is Christina Hoyt Nutrition. You can find us on our website at millennialbodyimageproject.com, which is where you'll get that freebie, which I linked in the show notes as well. And then we'll see you soon for another episode.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.